Hello everyone, this is Isaac Gonzalez from the Facebook group Review Masters. In this episode of Thought Transmission, I'm going to walk you through setting up a basic WordPress site on GoDaddy. There are two things you need when setting up a website: a domain name and a hosting provider. Most web hosting companies today will provide you with an easy way to get both. The first thing when people are setting up a website is, what web hosting company should I use? Which one do you recommend? What is the best? Now, asking around for the right web hosting company can open up a can of worms. Everyone has their own opinion, everyone has their own experiences. When you're working with websites, all kinds of things can go wrong. It can be on a software side, a database, server configuration. It can actually be the web hosting site themselves that go down. But generally, when the site goes down, the web hosting company is the first to get blamed. As a result, when people say they've had bad experiences, I really don't know if it's the web hosting company's fault. Most of them have issues. I mean, it's just the nature of the industry. I chose GoDaddy because it is the most popular. It is relatively inexpensive, and as of today, they have pretty decent customer service. I ran into an issue with them on one of my sites a few months ago. I called their tech support, and they were super friendly and helpful and got my site up right away. With that said, it was their fault the site went down, and while I was talking to someone, they were trying to upsell me on more services. It is what it is. And I do use other web hosting companies, such as HostGator. I have a shared hosting account with them, and they've been great. And then also DigitalOcean for a virtual private server, and they're using a cloud system. They are awesome. So just to let you know, GoDaddy's not the only company I use. I figured it'd be the best to use for this particular screencast series. So let's get started. So when you go to GoDaddy.com, the first thing they have is they want you to search for a domain name, because before you get started, buy a domain name. And if you're thinking about buying a domain name, don't wait, just buy it, because they do go up pretty quick, especially if you have something awesome that hasn't been taken already. But let's think of a domain name. I don't know, my super duper totally cool domain name.com. Search domain name. What do you know? It's available. No one on this planet has ever thought of using this domain name. Sweet! It's always for the taking. All right. Well, just to let you know, there are others. You don't have to stick with .com. I personally do, because I want the .com domain. But there is .net, there's .info, there's .org, .vegas. Oh my gosh. I looked for Elvis.Vegas. Unfortunately, it is taken, but that would have been pretty cool to have Elvis.Vegas. Okay, so let's go with this one. Select here, continue to cart. Protect my personal information. Okay, just so you know, there is a service called Whois. If you look up a domain name, you can use this service to look up a domain name, and you can find out information about this person. Sometimes it's great, if you plan on selling your domain name, you want people to find you. Other times, you just don't want the spam. So I personally use privacy protection. I use this service. When people look up my sites, they're not going to see my name available unless I want them to. Let's add that in there and scroll down. Let's skip 2 for now for web hosting, because I'm going to go through that in a second. No emails, add to cart. The first thing you're going to notice, whoa, $113. I thought this was only going to cost about $14. It's because they set you up by default on 5 years. So you just got to go to 1 year, and there you go, $21.16. This keeps switching. I swear, I purchased a domain name earlier and it was at $18. When you go through this process, I don't know what the price is going to be. For 1 year, making it private, I have no other options for some reason. You probably could find a promo code on the net if you go searching. We won't do that here. Proceed to checkout. You can purchase your domain name. So the second thing we want to do is to get web hosting. Now, if you don't know what web hosting is, basically you're just renting out to use a little bit of a server that's connected to the backbone of the internet on that hard drive. Just renting space on the internet. So let's go back to GoDaddy. We are going to go to hosting, web hosting, right here. Now, if you're watching this video, chances are you're starting out and you're not familiar with web hosting. I would say just go with the economy plan. Go with the cheapest plan available. It allows you for 100 gigabytes of storage with supposedly unlimited bandwidth. It's just a cheap way to get started. The other plans are available for more storage and then also faster processing power, so your site runs a bit smoother when it gets more hits. Add to cart. So it's $4.99 if you register it for 12 months. If you're paying for a minimum of 3 months, they're going to charge you extra. It depends. If you want to go super cheap, then go on do the 12 months or whatever, however long you think. If you don't know how long this site's going to be active, then go with the $6.99. Your operating system, make sure you choose Linux. WordPress, I'll get more into detail on this, but Linux is pretty much the default operating system for WordPress. And that's it. So as you can see here, we have our domain name and we have our economy Linux hosting with cPanel. Costs about $42. So this is about what you're going to need to get started, unless you can find a promo code or you decide to use another web hosting company that has a cheaper option. Again, I'm using GoDaddy, so they have a very cool cPanel that makes it easy to give a screencast on, and that's why I'm basically choosing GoDaddy right now. So I have purchased a domain name specifically for the screencast, createthisSite.com. I also have purchased my web hosting, on GoDaddy. What we are looking at now is GoDaddy's control panel, or also known as a cPanel. Just about every web hosting company is going to provide some type of cPanel. Plesk is a very popular one. And what a cPanel does, it provides you easy access to configure your server. Now, me personally, when I'm working on a lot of my servers, I actually prefer to use the command line. So everything I do is in the command line. If you're starting out, this is all new to you, working with the cPanel is perfectly fine. And especially if you're working with WordPress, this is more than enough to get started. First thing we will need to do is to set up an FTP account. Now what FTP is, it is called File Transfer Protocol, and it is a way of transferring files, both uploading and downloading from your computer to your server. So if you click here, so here you can create a login account, for example, dev at createthisSite.com. You can put in your password, or you can auto-generate your password. I'm not going to use that. And then you create the account. Once that is created, you will then need to download a FTP client or an FTP program. A very popular one that's somewhat open source. It's free to use, but they do want you to donate to use it, is CyberDuck. It is available both on Windows and Mac, and it's pretty simple to use, and it's a great cheap option. I personally do not use CyberDuck. For my FTP transactions, I use a program called Coda, which is actually a HTML text editor. For the purpose of this screencast, we're going to stick with CyberDuck. Coda is a paid editor. It's about $100, I think, to purchase it. So here's CyberDuck. Oh, the other cool thing with this is that if you are using GoDaddy, you can actually look, if you go to configure FTP clients, you can actually download your FTP configuration file for CyberDuck if you're on the Mac. If you're on Windows, you might want to use FileZilla or Core FTP, but you can download these files and it'll automatically configure your FTP account for that. So that's pretty cool. Let's take a look at CyberDuck. And here's CyberDuck. You would go to Open Connection, put the name of your server on there, which is, if you go back to FTP accounts, you scroll down, you'll get the name of your server, you enter in your username and then the password that you set up. That will connect you to your GoDaddy account. Now, it will ask you when you set this up, do you want a secure connection? As of now, GoDaddy does provide what's called SFTP. And so if you just click yes on everything, and it'll transfer over to a more secure protocol. So there's FFTP, which is File Transfer Protocol. Then there's SFTP, which is Secure File Transfer Protocol. You can set that up on GoDaddy. Now, let's download WordPress. This is the latest version. You go to wordpress.org and you can click here to download it. It will come as a zip file. And let me give you a quick introduction of what WordPress is. It originally started as a blogging platform. It's basically a simple tool to use that you can use to set up a blog really quickly. Since then, it's expanded to what's called a content management system, and it's used to create websites, also small e-commerce shops, and they've extended it so much, there's probably a lot more you can do that I probably couldn't even mention in this screencast. And let me give you a quick I guess if you can look in the code behind for WordPress. It's written in a language called PHP, which is just, I guess, a simple web language. It's just a programming language that's specifically made for the web. It outputs what's called HTML data. Here's an HTML file. And, it also connects to a database, primarily a MySQL server. We're going to talk about that in a bit. But all WordPress is, it's just a bunch of text files. Now we want to move these text files onto your server. So let's go to CyberDuck. Here's, we took care of all the connections. And what you can do if you're on a Mac, I don't know if this works on a Windows, I imagine it's no different. Here is a new install of WordPress. It comes in as a zip, you expand it, you have all your files here. All you have to do is literally drag this over into your web directory. That's it. You've moved WordPress over to your server. So the next thing we need to do is to create a new database for WordPress. If you don't know, a database, basically a special server application that's used to store large amounts of information. That's it. I'm not going to say any more. It's just a program you use to store information. WordPress, it's back engine database storage primarily is using a specific type of database called MySQL. So if you click on MySQL databases here, back in GoDaddy cPanel, if you scroll down to databases, you can click on MySQL databases. We're going to click here. And here you can create a new database, set the name, and then, so once you have your new database, my new database, you're going to create the name of, I've already created one called TestDB. And actually, let's do this again, TestDB2. I'm going to create a brand new database. Okay, it's been created. And then the next thing you need to do is to create a user to access that database. I've already created one. DevTest is my user. He has access to database 1. I'm going to give him access to database 2. And we're going to add that here. I'm going to select all privileges. Without going into detail, this is the simplest thing to do. I guess anyone can come in and say, well, you shouldn't do this, shouldn't do that. But honestly, you can just select all, it's fine. If someone hacks into your database using that specific database user account, they will have access to do everything here that you selected. You probably can get away with only clicking on a few of these, such as alter, create, delete. We're just going to select on all for now. Make changes. That's it. Okay, so we've moved our site over to our server. We've created a brand new database. We created a new user who has access to that database. Now we can get started on setting up our WordPress site. This is all live, by the way. CreateThisSite.com is my domain name. I purchased this a few weeks ago with the intention of creating a screencast. When you first purchase a domain name, it sometimes takes an hour to 24 hours, maybe 48 hours for that domain name to be available publicly for everyone to see. So you might need to wait a while. That's why I say if you're thinking of a domain name, purchase it now. When you're ready to use it, it'll be available. And now we can actually start proceeding with the installation of WordPress on our site. So let's go to createthisSite.com. This is what happens when you have a fresh install of WordPress. We are going to go to English, and here you can read all this, but basically it's saying you need to set up a database. We need to connect our database. I named mine TestDB2. The username is devtest. This is my username that I created. My password is that. I'm going to change that. The hosting, localhost. Generally, when you set up a server and you have a database on that server, localhost is fine. Sometimes some web hosting companies, they have their database on another server, so you would have to put, I guess, the URL to that server. But for most of the cases, localhost is fine. So submit. All right, Sparky. Great, so no errors. If something went wrong, you'll usually see a note that something went wrong, and chances are because the username or the password or even the database name are incorrect, and you have to go back and figure out what you did wrong. So let's see here, run install. Here we go. So create this site. Okay, so site title, create this site, username, devtest. This can be anything. A lot of people like to use the word admin. If you want to make it super secure, do something creative with it. Password, I'm going to say password for now. Hopefully it'll let me do this. Isaac at devserver39, install. Perfect. Let's see here, we did dev test, password, and we are inside WordPress. Woohoo! We have successfully installed WordPress on our new site. createthisite.com. This is exciting. Now I can talk about WordPress. Okay, where do I get started? Let's see here. Well, let's go down the side menu. Posts. Okay, WordPress by default is a blogging platform. Here's where you go to add new blog posts. Right here. Media is where you would go to upload images and files. Pages. So WordPress has kind of like two types of pages. It has like a static page, a contact page, an about me page, and frequently asked question page, a license page. Any information that doesn't change very often is going to go inside a page. Anything that's regards to a blog or something that gets added over and over again or updated is or something that a section of your site that you're going to continually add to over and over again is probably going to go in a post. This does get a bit complicated when you start extending WordPress functionality. So just let that be known. Comments. By default, WordPress does allow people to add comments to your site. Most of the time, this is turned off. So I'll leave it at that. From my experience, appearances. Now, okay, the power of WordPress is in themes, themes and plugins. There are a countless number of awesome looking themes that you can install immediately on WordPress, and the beautification of your site is about 50 to 80% done thanks to the theme you chose. Really cool stuff with WordPress, and I'll show you real quick. So default is 2015 theme, hello world. Let's check out 2013 theme. I'm gonna make this as my default theme. Click here, and the look of my site instantly changes. That's pretty awesome with WordPress. Customize. Here you would go to set configurations for your theme. For example, the tagline, or the site title, the tagline, my awesome, you can see it switch on the fly, it's pretty cool. Site, the color, I want this to be white. Actually, it's hard on the eyes, I'm going to keep it at black. Widgets, functionality you can add to the site. I will explain this probably a little bit later. I'm going to avoid widgets for now. And okay, this is what throws people off. Whenever they install a new theme and their site looks nothing like the theme that they want it to install, chances are it's because you have it set to your under static front page, you have it set to your latest post. What you want to do is you want to click on static page and select this to a specific page, for example, sample page. And as you can see, I made that switch, and now it is actually the home page of your site is just a regular static page. For most people, that's what they want. And then from there, they customize it to, oops, accidentally open Safari. They customize it to do more things with WordPress. So let's leave this alone. Menus. So with WordPress, you can add your own menus. And so with this is pretty cool. So you have pages and posts. You can, right now we only have one page, sample page, but as you add more pages and posts, you can actually select these, add to menu, and then that page is now available in your top menu. And here's where you would go to edit that. Oh, the other cool thing with WordPress is that it has a built-in editor. Remember all those files I showed you earlier of WordPress? All these files right here? Right, well their admin actually gives you access to all these files, and you can make updates to them directly in the admin. So you don't even need a text editor. You can do it all within WordPress. I personally hate working in this. I would rather use my default text editor because I have all kinds of cool stuff happening that makes it easy for me to work on websites, but that is available for quick fixes. Okay, the next popular thing, or the next powerful thing I would say with WordPress, aside from appearances, are plugins. This is where the magic happens for most websites. You can go to WordPress.com or WordPress.org and look up plugins. and there are thousands and thousands of plugins that you can use for your site. Someone can write a whole book, multiple books on the plugins for WordPress. On my Facebook group, Viewmasters, I do have my top 5 plugins. Probably in another screencast, I will review installing these plugins. For now, I'm just going to leave this alone. Users, by default, it's going to have your admin users. However, a lot of WordPress sites are like member sites, or they have a forum, or people are going to be posting comments, and here's where you would manage all the users that have access to the site. Also, you can set different roles so that certain people are allowed to make a post, but they can't access pages, or other custom configurations can be made in here. And I think that's about it. Oh yeah, if you want to disable, so let's go to our WordPress site, and by default it's going to allow comments. If you want to disable this feature, which is a pretty popular thing to do, you would go under settings here, and you would go under discussion, and then here you would basically unclick this. So you're going to disallow people to make comments on your site. And the reason why a lot of people don't like comments on their site is because generally if you have any type of comment system, it's going to get bombarded with spam, and people are going to come and they're going to try to hack into your site. They're going to upload a JavaScript information. They're going to do something to your site, malicious to your site, and having comments in there, welcoming people to try to do things to your site. So most you'll find that very few sites have comment system, or they use a third-party system such as like a Facebook plugin, and there's a few other services. That way you rely on their system to manage all the comments as opposed to WordPress itself. One last thing I wanted to mention, going back to GoDaddy in their cPanel, they have, if you scroll down, they have a section called Web Applications. If you click, you will see that there's WordPress, Joomla, and Drupal. They're the 3 most popular CMS platforms. And if you click on WordPress, it provides you with the ability to install WordPress directly on your site, and it sets everything up for you. It might work for you. I just know that I've had other people use this method and they've ran into issues, or they install it, they realize that it's not something they want to do on their own, so they hire another developer. Another developer tries to work with it and they run into issues. I don't know if that's still the case, but in the past. Plus, I want to give people the knowledge, knowing that they can install WordPress themselves, and the knowledge that I did present in the screencast you can use on any web hosting company that's out there. So I just want to throw it out there. Someone might say, you can install WordPress directly in GoDaddy cPanel. I know that, and I probably, we could have went that route, but I decided to use the install it yourself method as opposed to GoDaddy doing it. So that's it. So that's it. We have installed WordPress in a nutshell. I definitely plan on going much deeper with this, but I figured, before I do that, I wanted to cover the basics as quickly as possible. If you have any questions, or if I went over something too quickly, feel free to join the Facebook group and ask me whatever you like. And that will conclude my introduction to WordPress. Thank you very much.